Yeah.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. Um, with us, we have the very, very important Alexei Morel, who's been doing amazing research in 3D printing lithium-ion batteries. Before we pass it off to him, I just want to introduce Origin. We are Northeastern's STEM incubator. We work to bring cutting-edge researchers to our campus, such as Alexei, and really build a STEM community of entrepreneurs who are looking to conduct the world's best new research and also make amazing projects. So with that, the structure of this event is basically going to be led by Alexei's research topic. He will be presenting for the first 30 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. I'll pass it off to Harshita.
Thanks, Jason. So finally, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. I know Jason already touched a little on this. We have with us today Dr. Alexei Morel. He is a doctor in materials chemistry and electrochemistry of solids, and a laureate of the prestigious 2021 Fulbright French Researcher Prize. He is currently visiting, he's a current visiting postdoctoral researcher at the University of Texas at El Paso. And he's here to talk to us about his research in 3D printing of lithium-ion batteries. So without further ado, Alexei, I'll hand it over to you to kick us off.
Thank you very much, Harshita. Okay, so let's share my screen. Let me know, please, if you can see it. Can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yep, we can see it.
Yeah, perfect. So hello, everyone. I mean, it's a huge honor for me to be here today. And I would like particularly to thank the whole Origin team and Jason and Harshita for their very kind invitation. So today I will talk, as explained previously, I will talk about lithium-ion battery 3D printing. Okay. If you have any question about that, of course, don't hesitate to use the chat, and I will answer to your question just after. Also, here is my email. So you can just reach me if you have any question or if you want to keep in touch. I don't have a institutional email right now because I was working in France actually, and I just moved to United States to El Paso, Texas, like 1 month ago. So right now I'm still waiting for my institutional email account. So you can contact me via Gmail. That's fine. So right now, of course, I will talk about lithium-ion battery 3D printing. But first of all, I just would like to share a little bit about my personal background. So I'm from south of France. I'm from Toulouse, okay? And there, so I started, like in bachelor, studying chemical engineering, materials chemistry. And I mean, during my studies, actually, I spent a lot of time abroad, and this is a message I would like to share with the students that here right now in that talk, that if you have opportunity to go abroad, go there, definitely. I mean, you will learn plenty of things, plenty of new languages, culture, etc., etc. And for me, at least, that was something that totally changed my mind. And it opened me, let's say, many doors in my professional careers. So during my bachelor, actually, I spent like 6 months in Mexico, in the city of Leon, and there, so I was still studying about chemical engineering. And then I applied to a master, which is a master Erasmus Mundus, Erasmus Plus right now. I just changed the name. I don't know if you heard about that, guys, but if you plan to apply to some master's degree, actually go to that particular web page. So here it's like a catalog, a list of many Erasmus Plus programs. So there are programs for bachelor, for master. I did master, okay, with that. You have even a program for PhD. And in many different topics, from mechanical engineering to chemistry to arts to, I mean, many things. And for example, in my case, so I did a master Erasmus Plus, okay, and that was like a 2-year master. And with people, so it was a class of, let's say, 20 students from all over the world in my class. And during 2 years, the classes were taught in English. And so the particularity of such a master is that each semester you go with your whole class, okay, with all of your friends, if you go from one country to another one. And so that's quite nice because you continue to study your master, but also with many people from abroad, etc. And that's really nice place. So first semester of this PhD, of this master thesis, of this master program was in France, actually, in the city of Toulouse. And second semester, with my classmates, we all went to Warsaw in Poland. And so my master I didn't mention, but that was more in energy storage and conversion and materials chemistry. I studied there. And then third semester was done in Cordoba, in south of Spain. So something I mentioned about this particular kind of masters is that actually you are paid to study, which is quite awesome, actually. So it's, I think annual salary is like about $20,000 a year that Erasmus, so through European Union, they're gonna pay you just to go there and to study. And there is even like travel grants, etc. provided. So I mean, don't do it only for money, but that's also helpful if your plan is to go abroad to learn from new cultures, etc. And if money is a limitation, in that case, you will have some grants that can help you. So of course, it's a bit tricky to enter. I mean, many people apply. I think each year for each program you have like 300 people applying and only maybe 20, 30 places. But apply. I mean, if you don't apply, you will never get a chance to go through that. Okay, so that's the message I have for you guys. Go for it. I mean, it's really amazing, and it opens many professional doors for your future career. So last semester of this master, actually, that was kind of a master thesis. So it was done into a laboratory, and I've done my master thesis in the city of Amiens, in energy storage, materials chemistry, but also this is when I started to work on 3D printing, because my master thesis topic was on lithium-ion battery 3D printing. Okay, and there actually in Amiens, so this is in north of France, I pursue actually in PhD thesis. Okay, and so that was exactly the continuity of what I've done in my master thesis. I just continue on the same topic, lithium-ion battery 3D printing. And so in Amiens, particularity is that you have a very beautiful cathedral. Okay, it's like 800 years old. But in front of this cathedral, actually, you have also one of the best laboratory for materials, chemistry, and energy storage in France. And this is called the Laboratory of Reactivity and Chemistry of Solids. And so this is where I worked during I worked 4 years. And so there, mainly people are really working on lithium-ion batteries quite a lot, also on photovoltaics, etc., hydrogen storage. And of course, we were lucky enough because we had plenty of facilities, characterization techniques to do all of the work and experiments that we wanted to perform. My PhD thesis also was done in collaboration with another laboratory, the Laboratoire of Innovative Technologies, which was more focused on the printing aspects. And so this is what I want to show you just after. So after my PhD thesis, I just moved actually, and as I was saying, to El Paso very recently. So to UTEP, University of Texas at El Paso. I will pursue my research right now on 3D printing of energy storage devices, so not only limited to lithium-ion battery anymore. I mean, we plan also to study other technologies of batteries. And I moved there actually thanks to Fulbright France awards, between the US Department of State and French government. So now I would like to introduce you to what I've done during my PhD thesis, but first of all, why battery 3D printing? So of course, I mean, you are all aware that right now, I mean, we are moving towards greener energy sources, but unfortunately, they are kind of intermittent. Indeed, if you take photovoltaic panels, for example, of course, I mean, during the night, imagine you don't have a sun. And so, of course, I mean, in parallel with this kind of intermittent energy source devices, you need to have also what we call energy storage devices, okay, that are needed. And lithium-ion battery is the most famous one, and right now it's used in many items. So electronics, in your phone, in your laptops, but also in home appliance. And if you are lucky enough to have electric vehicles, please share it with me if you can. I mean, I don't have it. I don't have one yet, but that's it. That's life, right? So anyway, these tiny devices, lithium-ion batteries, are become so important nowadays. I'm sure you are listening to me right now via your laptop or via your phone right now. And I mean, of course, these devices has one lithium-ion battery. So I'm sure near you, you have right now, at the moment of this talk, you have at least one or two lithium-ion batteries near you, less than 1 meter. So this is something absolutely amazing. It's that these tiny devices are very something that we use every day. And they are so important that in 2019, there was even the Nobel Prize that was given to the three researchers, the three pioneers in this field. So if you take a look at a commercial lithium-ion battery, you will see that it's composed of many different parts, positive electrodes, a negative electrode, and divided by a separator. And of course, doing charge and discharge, as you can see here in this small animation, you will have the lithium ion that will move from one electrode to another, okay, doing kind of shuttle. And so if you take a look at the commercial lithium-ion batteries that you have in your phone, for example, they are all following what we call two-dimensional architectures of the battery, meaning that they all consist of foils, okay, a stack of foils, and they can be sometimes also rolled. But this is what we call a two-dimensional architectures of the battery. And thanks to 3D printing, actually, it was demonstrated in the past that you know, we could obtain like three-dimensional architectures of lithium-ion battery, and this will improve mainly the power performances, meaning that you will be able, thanks to architecture like this, to increase, you know, the charge rate of your battery. You could imagine to charge your phone, for example, much faster. And why is that? Is because thanks to this kind of three-dimensional architectures of the battery, you can imagine to have much more surface area, electroactive surface area, and in the lithium-ion diffusion will be done in like the 3D into the wall space. Second important thing about 3D printing is that thanks to 3D printing, you can imagine also to have like shape conformable battery. So here I just take as example the Google glasses. If you take the conventional design of the Google glasses, you can see that the lithium-ion battery is, I mean, the commercial one, you know, the conventional design, you have a huge block on one side of the frame, which is kind of ugly, but also it's kind of limiting because you have a lot of let's say, waste, you know, talking about the volume space and waste. And so thanks to 3D printing, you could imagine to, for example, hide the wall battery into the wall frame of the object, you know. And so this is something that it's much more easier to attain right now, and most of scientists working in the field, they are working to achieve that that particular. So what is 3D printing? So it's good to know that it's also called additive manufacturing. Okay, it consists in consecutive layers of materials that are deposited on top of each other. And so thanks to this technique, you can achieve very complex geometries that are not possible to attain with conventional methods and manufacturing technologies. And so, I mean, we can divide it into different steps. First step is you need to design the object that you want to print. Okay, thanks to a CAD software, you will obtain what we call a STL file, and this is this file that you will send to a second software, which we call the slicer, and it will allow you to slice your object into different layers. Okay, and this is this final G-code file that you will send directly to the 3D printer, and layer by layer, you will be able to print your final object. So when I started my PhD thesis, that was so in 2017, I mean, we just took a look at literature, and it was kind of empty. I mean, not a lot of things in literature at that moment. But here is just a summary of all of the techniques that was just at least used once to kind of attempt to print some lithium and battery components. And so here are many processes. I will not enter into detail right now, but you see with different names, etc. And the first step of this PhD thesis was like, okay, which 3D printing techniques are we gonna choose? And of course, as you can imagine, you have also some techniques that are much cheaper and more available than others. And also what we want to do, of course, is, our objectives, our main objective was to print the complete lithium and battery in one single step at the end. And to do so, you need to have like what we call multi-materials printing option. And unfortunately, selective laser sintering and stereolithography apparatus multi-materials printing options are reported in literature, but at the time and still, they are not widely available. You can most of the time only print one material at a time, and so that's kind of a limitation. So we decided to put that aside and just maybe take a look closer to liquid deposition modeling and fused deposition modeling, because thanks to these two techniques, multi-materials printing options are widely available right now. And so that can allow you, of course, to print complex geometries of 3D batteries. So between these techniques, of course, you have different advantages, different drawbacks. For example, with LDM, you have some drawbacks of high limitation, but also post-processing steps such as thermal annealing. And here the plan, of course, was really to print the complete lithium and battery, but we didn't want to perform any thermal annealing, etc. We just wanted to print, and after printing, the battery was kind of working. And so this is why actually we focused on the fused deposition modeling. I will enter into more details just after that. And we were still aware that the main drawback is that in order to make it work, fused deposition modeling, you need to have a filament. And why is that? Is because if you take a closer look to that technique, how does it work? Yeah. So you have a filament spool, okay, a filament, a thermoplastic filament, which is inserted into one extruder head. And by displacement into the 3-axis, you will be able to deposit your material after heating layer by layer, and to build complex geometries. And so here, of course, the idea of that project, if you want to print lithium and battery components, you need to develop first different kind of composite filaments. And so that was my PhD thesis topic. So of course, as you can imagine, when you want to formulate, to elaborate some composite filaments for each component of lithium and battery, that was that was a huge compromise between mechanical performances and printability, and of course electrochemical performances, because here as polymer matrix, we decided to use polylactic acid, PLA, which is very classical material in 3D printing via this technique. And of course, if you don't have enough PLA, it will considerably affect your mechanical performances. Okay, and within this polymer matrix, to give some electrochemical performances, the plan was to add some active materials such as graphite, also lithium iron phosphate, LFP, which are classical active material for respectively the negative and the positive return. So too high loading of the active material within the polymer matrix, within the filament, will give you some printability issues, and not enough active material. Of course, what you will print that will not work as a battery, right? So that was just a compromise, and the main objective that I want you to keep in mind is that we wanted just to make a proof of concept and to print a complete lithium and battery in one shot, in one single step, thanks to this FDM technique, fused deposition modeling. So here is the elaboration process that I followed during my work. So first step was to use a slurry, a solvent, and to combine all of the different components, so polymer matrix and additives. So carbon additives, to give electronic conductivity, but also, the active materials, of course. Then we did a tape casting in order to obtain some films after the evaporation. And we cut these films into tiny pieces, and we inserted it into the extruder in order to obtain composite filaments. And this filament was later used and as material source for the 3D printer, and we were able to 3D print electrodes, for example, objects, and later we did electrochemical characterization on it to demonstrate that it was working as battery. So for each part of the battery, of course, we had to develop different kind of filaments. So let's focus right now on the negative electrodes. So for that, first of all, we checked that literature, and we saw that there was a commercial filament available at the time. And here is the composition. So you see that this commercial filament at the time was composed of 8% of graphene. Graphene can be used as active material for the negative electrode. And here in that filament, you can see that there was like 92% in weight percentage of PLA, which is a polymer matrix. Of course, this polymer matrix, I mean, it's not electroactive, okay? So for the battery, it will have a bad impact, okay? So our goal was to rather make, you know, a homemade, bespoke composite filaments. And so here is the target we try to achieve. And so we try to make, that was one of the first experiments I've done, was to create a filament, but highly loaded. As you can see, from 8%, we tried something drastically different because we tried to put a very high loading of graphite up to 70% with only 30% of PLA in order to maximize the electrochemical performances, but also to maintain just enough mechanical strength to allow the good printability. And so we have done that. I mean, we first, as I said, we combine all of the components within a slurry, we obtain a film, and then we cut this film into the extruder to obtain a filament. Unfortunately, here, when we did that, I mean, the resulting filament was directly too brittle and not printable at all. And so we tried something else, and we said, okay, why not try to incorporate a magic component? And in that case, that was the plasticizer. And the plasticizer, his role was to try, you know, to improve the flexibility of the filament. And so maybe doing that, it will be printable. And so we tried different kinds of plasticizer with very, I mean, very long name, as you can see here, polyethylene glycol dimethyl ether 500, etc., etc. I will not mention everything. I mean, it's just written here. But so we tried many different kind of plasticizer, and with propylene carbonate, for example, with PC, we saw that there was an issue because after evaporation, okay, after extrusion, you get your filament, and after a few days, your filament is brittle once again. And why is that? Is because thanks to a DSC experiment, what we saw is that you know, evaporation of this plasticizer was occurring. And so, you know, once again, the filament was brittle and of course not printable. So that was definitely not the good choice. With ATBC and another kind of plasticizer, PEGDME 2000, we got another kind of issues, is that the filament that we had was whipping, and meaning that there was an incompatibility with, I mean, from these two plasticizer with the polymer matrix. And resulting filament again was becoming brittle and not printable. And with PEGDME 500, we were lucky enough because we didn't see any issues with it, and it just looked fine, the filament. So of course we have done like an optimization with different kind of ratio, and we checked also the mechanical properties of you know, of this composite, and we determined our optimized ratio. Here it is. And you see here, what is important is that the final ratio of the active material, which is highly important for the battery, here was up to 62. So much more higher than the 8% from the commercial filament that just showed you previously. Right? So here are some SEM images that we have done. So here are cross-sectional images, meaning that we cut our filament by cross-section, okay? And I mean, when you look at it, you can clearly see the active material, the graphite particles that are really, really well dispersed within the polymer matrix, the PLA matrix here. And main limitation actually is that with the extruder I was using, it was still too big, and you know, to get a homogeneous filament like this, at least 100 grams of materials was required to have a good homogeneity, which is quite high because usually, so graphite here is not too expensive, that's fine, this is for negative electrode, but materials for the positive electrode, for example, like LFP that I was mentioning previously. It's much more, of course, toxic, but also expensive. And so that can be a kind of issue. So then after that, starting from this optimized plasticizer composition, we did also an optimization of the conductive additive content, because in battery, when you're dealing with electrodes, of course, I mean, you need to have something that is electrically conductive. Okay, so we have tested different kinds of conductive additives such as carbon black and carbon nanofiber, as you can see in that slide, and we obtain or optimize the value, okay, or optimize sample here, and here are some TEM images, as you can see. So here is the final composition of our sample, and so you can see that final composition, or I mean optimized composition, the resulting graphite content was only 49%. So you see, little by little, after optimization, it was decreasing. But the good thing is that from the electrochemical standpoint, I mean, in parallel, we have performed some experiments, and that was promising, as I will show you just after. In TEM image, what you can see is that the carbon black particles that we just put were really well dispersed, but unfortunately, I mean, there was still room for improvement. And so this is, once again, a compromise, because if you put too much carbon black, of course, you will have also printing issues, right? So it's kind of tricky compromise here. So talking about the electrochemical characterizations that I just mentioned, I mean, we have done some different tests in both films and also on 3D printing, on 3D printed discs, just to show that these electrodes were indeed working, for the application in a classical lithium-ion battery. And so we have done that. To do that, we have assembled what we call in our field a Swedge-Log cell. So typically, you put your working electrode, you put a separator in the middle, and you test that with, using lithium metal as reference. And here, long story short is that indeed we demonstrated that our samples that we just printed from the composite filament that we developed was indeed working as negative electrode here. So that was a huge success, and we didn't stop here, because our plan then was to develop other kind of part of the battery. So we continued with positive electrodes, and we did exactly the same thing for separator. So I will not enter into details because it's exactly the same, but here you can see a summarize of all of the compositions that we have developed. So for positive electrode, we have used lithium iron phosphate as active material, as you can see. And for separator, which is different, very different here, because what you want to obtain is, just something insulator, electronically, but ionically conductor. So here we just put some silica content in order to improve that. And of course, the resulting filament, they are totally different in terms of mechanical performances. You can see that the electrodes filaments are really, really brittle. And in parallel, you can see that the separator filament was kind of flexible. And so, of course, you need to adapt, the printing parameter when you try to consider printing the complete lithium-ion battery. That was quite challenging to do that. Indeed, I mean, if you take a look at commercial filaments, they are really easy to print. Okay, they are really stiff, resilient, hard, and so you can just use classical printing parameters that are given by the manufacturer. By the company selling your printer. Okay, but when you take into account very composite filaments that the one I was developing for the electrodes, they are very brittle, and so most of the time, the filament will just break within your gears, and also you can clog the nozzle. So that's why that was very complicated to do that. But you need to, for example, print slowly. Some parameters like this, and so of course, when you have such an issue, sometimes it will not print properly. Right from the start, nothing will come out of the nozzle, or sometimes just in the middle of a print, it will just stop randomly. And so you need to play and tune the printing parameters to do that, or even make some printing modification. And regarding the composite separator filament, so it was very, very flexible. And so here we had other kind of issue. We experienced filament buckling within the gears. And so again, I mean, other kind of printing parameters modifications that were needed here. So first step was to print independently the different components, okay, for the battery with all of the different filaments that I developed, okay. So here you can see the different components, and we put everything into, I mean, a swedge lock, okay, to check just by stacking it, the performances of the battery. And so the performances of the battery were, of course, limited. I mean, nothing in common with a commercial battery here, mainly due to the thickness of your electrodes, okay? But we demonstrated that it was working. And here, I mean, this was, again, a huge success for us because at least we had our proof of concept. But that's not it. I mean, we didn't stop here because, of course, the next step was to demonstrate the printability of the complete lithium-ion battery in one single print, meaning that electrode and separator layers must be printed in top of each other. Okay, this is what I will call later a one-shot battery. And of course, that was also an implementation of an in-depth technical protocol and with the tuning of many printing parameters within the slicer software for each different filament, like load speed, you know, nozzle bed temperature, fan speed, flow ratio, retraction, etc., etc. And so here it's just a small video that I just wanted to introduce you to. So you guys are like in the laboratory with me. So of course, the first step is to design the objects that you want to print. So here that was the logo of my previous laboratory. And here you see I cut it into different layers. So each layer will correspond to one different component. So here, the first step was to print the positive electrodes. Okay, so here you can see that I just load this positive electrode filament within the printer. Here right now, I'm doing the calibration of the printer. Okay, as you see just previously, I mean, it was important also to clean and to purge the nozzle to be sure that what is coming out is indeed your positive electrode filament. And once you finish, I mean, to print this first layer, the printer will automatically stop, okay? And then you will have to unload the filaments and put the next one. So here it is. Here you can see the perfect first layer corresponding to the positive electrode filament. And now second layer, that will be the separator. So once again, I mean, same procedure. You need first to purge your nozzle with your separator filament, and again you print on top of it. Okay, so of course, as you can see here, I mean, you know, the change of filaments here was done manually, but later, I mean, I don't have the video, but we put a small program in order to make that you know, automatically with the machine. So we didn't even have to change our filaments by ourselves. So after the filament for separator is printed, here, once again, I mean, last step, what is it? It's the negative electrode filament. So here again, I mean, you need to be sure that what is coming out is really corresponding to your filament. So this is why we purge. And here, final layer was the negative electrode. Here, just a close-up, so you can see really the nozzle passing, of course. And once it's finished, again, the printer just stops automatically. And here you have your battery. So is the battery here complete? Not completely. Why is that? It's because here in that case, when you use a separator, you need still to put what we call a liquid electrolyte. Okay, so the battery that I just printed here, you need to put it into a liquid electrolyte, soak it, you know, and after that, yes, it will work as lithium-ion battery. So just here, you can see a transversal image of the complete lithium-ion battery. So if you didn't recognize, you can see the 3 different layers. Okay, so you have the positive electrodes, the separator, and the negative electrodes. But here you see that it's quite dense. And unfortunately, I mean, the liquid electrolyte, you know, I mean, it really needs to have a good impregnation for it to work, I mean, for your battery to work properly. And so here, as it was really dense, I mean, the respective electrochemical performances were limited, let's say, And so what we had to do was, I mean, an idea that I had at the time was to play with the different infill patterns that are already automatically generated thanks to the classical printing softwares, okay? So you can generate infill patterns and also you can play with infill density. And so here the idea was to use such a pattern, you know, to use it as separator. And so here, when you soak the complete lithium-ion battery within your liquid electrolyte, the liquid electrolyte will be able to be impregnated everywhere. You know? And of course, here it's kind of tricky because if you put an infill density that is too low, I mean, the main risk is that you can have short circuit. You know, if the positive touch the negative, usually it's a bad sign, and you will have short circuit. So here, that was once again a compromise that we had to attempt. And so here, maybe you didn't recognize this is a SEM image that I've colored. So you have in purple at the top you have the positive electrodes, okay, and here at the bottom you have the negative one, and here in gray is the separator. And here you can see that you have some caves that are created due to the infill pattern that we put. Here we just put a small, very thin additional layer with an infill of 100%. That is just here, just to be sure that we didn't have any short circuits. And so last step was, of course, to confirm that this was working as a lithium-ion battery. And here, so once again, I mean, performances were limited due mainly to the huge amount of polymers, thermoplastic matrix, the PLAs that we have within all of these different filaments, okay? But still, I mean, that was a proof of concept, and the battery was definitely working. So what about the next step, right? Because right now, I mean, what I just show you is still planar, okay? So, I mean, this is the limitation. So what is the next step? Next step is to go further and try to play with these multi-materials printing options in order to print complex three-dimensional architectures. And so I've done that actually. So we just bought a multi-material option. So I just attached it to my Prusa printer. And with that, you can print actually 5 filaments at the same time. So the idea that we have is that we could print, you know, such three-dimensional lattices. So here in blue, for example, for the positive electrodes, in red for the negative electrode, and in white here maybe for electrolyte or separator, okay? But I've done that with commercial filaments, and so far it's still a bit complicated to do that with composite filaments because they are, you know, or too brittle or too flexible. So we're working on that right now. And of course, the main issue with the FDM process, and we are still aware of that, is resolution. Here, you know, it's like the size of a coin, so it's quite small. And this piece here, it's just, I think, it's like 1 centimeter. But still, I mean, of course, for battery application, it's still too big. So we need to find a way to also circumvent these resolution issues. So that's all for my talk right now, and I hope it wasn't too long. And I mean, thank you very much again to the Origin team for your very kind invitation, and I look forward hearing your question right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Alexei. That was a very informative talk. I learned a lot. And I personally have a million questions too.
Yeah.
I have so many questions for you, but I definitely want to give a chance to the audience. If anyone has questions, definitely put it in the chat box.
Yeah. So something, Jason, I wanted to mention. So here I just put my Gmail address once again, and I put also my LinkedIn account and my professional Twitter account. So don't hesitate. I mean, if you want to keep in touch, or if you want to see, you know, the future projects that I will work on, just follow that, and you will get some news as well.
Awesome. Yeah. To start off, one of the questions that we have from the audience is, since batteries are commonly mass produced, how can 3D printing batteries be achieved at scale?
Yeah, so this is a good question. This is not the goal. This is not the target that we go for right now. Of course, I mean, 3D printing batteries are not gonna revolutionize the field I mean, you're not gonna have like a 3D printing battery in your smartphone tomorrow. But this is like for customized application, let's say. Just the ability to have a 3D printed battery that a battery that you can hide within the wall object, just like I was showing, you know, the Google glasses. I mean, you know, if you're able to hide the complete lithium-ion battery into the wall frame of the object, so you know you reduce considerably the weight, waste and volume waste as well. And so this is something that designers and also companies are really looking forward. You know, we call it in mechanical engineering, we call that topological optimization. Yeah. So of course, we are not. I mean, this is not the goal. We are not going to compete with the very good commercial 2D planar batteries that we have right now. It's just for customized applications.
Sure. Yeah.
For now. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question is, you were mentioning how the filament has to be made like very, very well, because it'll either end up being very brittle or very flexible. So when you contribute all those, when you add all those factors together, and then you have to add in the right print speeds, you know, the right layer heights, are there certain limitations of the shape that the battery can actually be in when you're using this many materials? That
no, yeah.
Yeah.
So no, I mean, there is no limitation. I mean, thanks to 3D printing, you can do whatever you want. So right now, what I just show you guys, I mean, that was mostly planar, but I've done like a very, very complex shapes that you can obtain just with 3D printing, like gyroid, etc., etc. And I mean, that was working. So of course, here, what is the limitation so far is the resolution limitation. Because with fuse deposition modeling, with this particular printing technique, you have a printing resolution. You know, the first layer is minimum, it's like 150 microns, and upper layer are like 50 microns, minimum 50 microns. But this is still too big for battery application, as I was saying. So of course, I mean, you can try, you know, to get a better resolution, for example, by decrease. I mean, still on this process, you can try, for example, to decrease the diameter of the nozzle, right? But this is not a good solution sometimes, because I mean, as I said, the filaments are really highly loaded. So imagine 1 second, you know, I'm right now experiencing like a nozzle clogging. So if you reduce and you put a smaller diameter of the nozzle, for example, to get a better resolution, I mean, you will not be able to print anything because the nozzle will clog every time. You see what I mean? So
Right.
Once again, I mean, it's just compromise, and of course, just experience can show that. So this is some experience. These are some experiments that must be done, of course, to see the limitation.
Yeah, definitely. And to that point, like talking about how you're getting a lot of clogging in the nozzle, have you guys tried to use a different extrusion method, something that doesn't require gears to turn to really extrude that? Like, I don't know, maybe something like pushing it?
Yeah, so we were thinking, I mean, it exists also. And so one of my ex-supervisor in France, he had developed like a homemade printer, and instead of using filaments, it was pellets, you know. And so directly you put your small pellets within the nozzle. I didn't have time to do that during my PhD thesis, but definitely that can be, you know, if the plan is to keep using this FDM 3D printing techniques. I mean, just, you know, to replace the filament material source by just, you know, if you replace the extruder head and you can feed the printer directly with pellets, it will circumvent many issues, of course. Yeah, many issues. But then, I mean, so maybe you will get a higher loading of active materials within your pellets, okay? But once again, I mean, when you try to print through the nozzle, you will still experience some nozzle clogging issues, right? So after that, of course, you can try to play with totally different 3D printing techniques. which higher resolution. I know, Jason, you are working with selective laser sintering, selective laser melting, so the powder bed fusion family, right? Also, that photopolymerization. You know, we can try to play with this kind of techniques that are much more, I mean, which have better resolution, of course. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All right. Another audience question is, how does 3D printing batteries affect the quality and cost when comparing this to other manufacturing processes?
Yeah, so right now, I mean, it's kind of too early to say, because of course, I mean, if you compare some laboratory works, you know, with something that is already industrialized, etc., you know, when you are in the industrialization, you can drop the prices, of course, of manufacturing, right? But 3D printing, I'm not sure, once again, that you know, it will be very competitive. I have to be critical with my work, right? So I mean, 3D printing, you know, of course, it's still slow, you know. I mean, imagine you print a battery layer after layer. It's still a slow process, you know. So this is not, once again, I mean, this is not the objective, you know, to be, I mean, and to compete with something that is already well working in your phone, etc. Here, this is just for customized application, and so this is where 3D printing can intervene, I think. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Another question is, do you think that exotic materials will ever be used for 3D printing batteries, like materials such as superalloys or semiconductors or superconductors?
Yeah, so I mean, I know that, I mean, I've been developing, so I didn't show that today, but I've been developing other kind of filaments regarding the battery applications, many different materials. And recently I've developed, as you call, I mean, the exotic filament, and that was silver copper that we put inside, and that was to be used, you know, within I mean, as current collector for a lithium-ion battery. We have done that, and we have published a paper recently on this. So, I mean, it already exists. Even if you want to print, for example, metals, I know that BASF, this is huge chemical companies, they are even selling some filaments loaded with stainless steel, for example, with some alloy, I guess. Of course, I mean, this kind of filaments, they print pretty well, and they have some, I mean, some secrets there, okay? But I mean, you can definitely print metals or alloys or whatever. The only thing is that if you want you know, to keep it and to have pure metal at the end, you need to make sintering after that. So usually with this BASF filament I've been playing with, for example, so first of all, you need to know that the spool, it's like $500, okay, because it's very technical, and so it's not for everyone, you know. I mean, if you are working in companies or universities, it's really good. So the filament, then, instead of, you know, it's just like the same volume of commercial filament, but of course, I mean, it's loaded with metal, so it's really heavy. And then so you print it with your desktop printer, it works pretty well. And then, I mean, what I want the audience to understand is that what you print is not directly pure metal, okay? You still need to make the sintering to remove all of the polymer matrix, and then to obtain your just metallic part. I've done that, it works pretty well, but for complex shapes, sintering process is something that must be mastered a lot, because it's very tricky to do the sintering process. You need to find the good parameters to do that. Atmosphere, and also temperature, rate, etc. Yeah. But it's possible.
Right. And but I bet you have to be like very careful when you do go through that sintering process, especially if you're using different types of materials, which
definitely, yeah. And usually when you do the debinding, I mean, just if I'm not wrong, I'm not specialized in sintering and I mean debinding and sintering, but usually the slower the better. Sometimes you have some sintering process that can take like days and weeks, just to make it properly. And atmosphere also is something very important. And so I know that BASF, I mean, they have their own sintering rate, etc., temperature range, and it works well. In our case, so as I said, I mean, we have developed a filament, so with silver and copper particles, and we directly printed that, and that was working as current collector for lithium-ion battery. And here that was working without performing any post processes, so without doing sintering, etc., etc. And the electrical conductivity that we've got were very promising.
Wow, yeah, very cool. So another question from the audience is, moving past just lithium-ion batteries, do you think it's possible, or has it been done? Do you think it's possible to 3D print something with more higher energy efficiency density, like lithium sulfur batteries?
Yeah, so I mean, there right now in the field it exists many technologies of batteries. Okay, so one goal, of course, is to reach. I mean, you have many goals in the battery field. One goal, of course, is to improve the capacity, etc., etc. Also, you know, to reduce the environmental footprint, because you know, in commercial lithium-ion battery, for example, you have cobalt, and so cobalt is, I mean, you know, it's like mined in some countries in Africa by children, etc. So this is something that we need to be aware of. So regarding the question, of course, right now, you know, when you plan to 3D print, you go for a technology of battery that is already commercial. Because in that case, the question is towards lithium sulfur. Indeed, lithium sulfur is a battery technology that is really promising, and many of studies are done right now with that. But it has also many issues that are not well understood right now. I'm thinking, for example, of the sulfur, I mean, polysulfur shuttles that are done upon cycling, etc. I'm not specialized in lithium sulfur at all. But and so, of course, I mean, going to you know, once again, I mean, when you want to 3D print a battery, there is no point to go to a technology of batteries that is not well developed, because 3D printing has already many issues, as you saw during my talk. So if you go for a technology of batteries that is not 100% mature, you know, it's even more complicated, let's say. So that's why right now we just focus into lithium and battery 3D printing. But of course, I mean, you can go to in that case lithium sulfur, but you can imagine to do exactly the same work I've done on sodium-ion batteries, on magnesium-ion batteries, on whatever technology you want to, right? But I mean, you need to be aware, of course, that I mean, these technologies are not 100% mature, and so maybe, you know, you will get results by doing 3D printing of these technologies, and then I mean, you know, when you try to do the analysis, it will not be due to the 3D printing itself, the issues that you will encounter. It will be due to some issues regarding the technologies that people don't understand yet, right? Yeah.
Right. All right. We're nearing down on time here. I want to open it up one more time for any questions. If anyone wants to break in with their audio or, you know, type in the chat, would love to hear from you guys.
Don't be shy.
Oh, have you ever experimented with this with SLA or thought about doing that?
Yeah, so I didn't talk too much about that, but
Yeah.
And I will not talk too much about that, but I'm working on it right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm working on it, and that's the project I'm doing right now at UTEP at El Paso.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so right now today I just show you guys what I've done on fused deposition modeling, but of course, I mean, we can go to many different kind of further techniques, 3D printing techniques. Yeah, this is a very good question. Thank you for that.
Yeah, maybe a future tech talk.
Yeah, exactly. I'll have to invite you back.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have questions?
I had a quick question.
Sure.
So, I mean, I almost feel like you might be downplaying how interesting and innovative this is when you, yeah, like I think that I assume that there are some instances, and correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't there be some instances where a product would benefit from being able to have a custom shaped battery for it? You know, because as it stands right now, if you want to buy a battery, usually there's a couple standard sizes that I assume work well for like certain embedded systems or hardware that's been designed, but I feel like there might be some situations where it would be more useful.
Yeah, so right now, I mean, at UTEP right now, so in El Paso right now, we are having many discussions with some aerospace companies or institutions. Okay, and of course they are all interested in 3D printing batteries. Why is that? Is because imagine an aircraft or a spacecraft, okay, a shuttle. You go to space, and of course you are really limited in terms of weight and in terms of volume, because each kilograms, okay, or each pounds, you say in US, I mean, it represents a huge cost, okay, and so of course you wanna decrease that, you know, of course, and by doing, you know, imagine if I don't know, in spacecraft, for example, if you can, you know, make a topological optimization of the battery, so it's directly, I don't know, for example, in the walls, or, you know, something like this. Of course, I mean, many institutions are right now very interested in that. I have also got some meetings in the past as well with, when I was still in France, with some smartphone companies, and also they are interested. So, I mean, right now, with what I just showed you today, with fused deposition modeling, I mean, 3D printing batteries, this is not for this kind of application. Why is that? Is because in what I show you guys, you need to be aware that there is still like 30% of polymer, okay? And so of course, these 30% of polymers that are within your battery, they are not electroactive components, meaning that it will affect considerably the performances of your battery. But maybe we can think in the future in, you know, I mean, playing with other kind of additive manufacturing techniques, you know, to circumvent this issue. And so, of course, you could go for other kind of application like spacecraft, electric vehicles, etc., etc. Right now, as I was saying, with this technique, we just you know, want to think about some very customized application, and let's say not you know, where energy is needed, of course, but not a lot of energy. So here in that case, for example, you know, for making connection with Wi-Fi for GPS or some stuff like that. I know that I've got an interesting meeting last year with a startup company from France, and they were interested in developing, for example, I think that was a GPS that would be hidden within the frame of your bike, okay? And so they are really interested because depending on the bike, of course, each bike, they have different shapes. And so what they wanted to do is just hide, you know, first of all, their GPS within the frame, okay? And also having the batteries that would be, you know, customized in the shape of the frame. And so, for example, when you have a thief, the guy steals the bike, and he cannot see the GPS, and you know, because it's really well hidden, etc., etc. So this is some kind of applications that we can think of. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a wide variety of applications, but yeah, it's cool to see how you can flexible shapes works.
All right. Last call for questions. Anyone have last minute questions? All right. If not, Alexi, I want to thank you so much for coming to talk to us. We all had a great time. I know that I certainly learned a lot.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Actually, that was really nice to me as well.
Of course.